What a beautiful day. So I'm thinking 2015, you release your book, Me and My Mate Jeffrey, Jeffrey being the name you gave for your general anxiety disorder. It seems to be a different world now. I don't know whether you're quite, amazed by just how much mental health has become a public issue, or I don't know whether you feel it's a million miles still to go in this country.
I think societally we've really developed the progress in terms of conversational stuff, but I think our systems unfortunately have very much regressed, if anything, which is, the focus of my PhD study is why that happens. So why are our systems not catering for the needs of the people who now are prepared to talk? And I'm not just talking children, I'm talking people who might have dealt with this for generations on their own or come from families that dealt with it. So there's a lot of wounds to heal in Ireland, and it will take time, but we have to mark the progress in education, in having the conversations in coffee shops and Greystones about it. This is not the Ireland we grew up in, and on one hand I do celebrate it, but on the other hand you have to get into the weeds with the reality that we need to create better systems of support for people.
I got the impression that the Irish government have been making progress in this area. I don't know whether that's just PR or spin that I've sort of fallen for, or whether there is a real concern that within the country mental health is one of the major issues.
I don't think politicians don't care. It's not that I don't buy into that. I've never done that. I just think this is an area that they're fearful of, and I think it's the Pandora's box that they're not really willing to open. And the reason for that is because if you look at the CAMS report that came out in January 2023, it makes for very grim reading, because if we put all our emphasis consistently and always on the over-reliance of a medical model, then we're not developing early intervention programs, or we're not developing trauma-informed care, or we're not developing therapeutic interventions for children and for everyone. So I think we need a rethink. And as I said, I've decided to go away and we set up a Lust for Life, my charity, which is now in over 1,000 primary schools. But now my main focus is the systems and where we're at with those systems and the legacy of institutionalisation in Ireland, which is 5-year research, but hopefully it'll start bringing some light to all of this.
We should give a shout out to Rachel Harper and others in the town of put together this initiative called It Takes a Village, and they just have a strong belief they see in young kids in primary school just having mental health issues, and that by addressing it at that stage in their lives can make a huge difference. It obviously is a smart move, because I know nationally now it's been picked up on.
Teachers are very much aware of what's happening, and after the pandemic what you also have is you have a new wave of other issues. We've basically peddled a huge level of fear at children for a period of time, and when you do that it makes them hyper-vigilant, so they will get anxious. There's a huge issue with OCD, for example, kids washing their hands. We've exposed them to so much of this for such a relentlessly for a period of time. It will have an impact, because I always say this about our brain isn't there to hurt us, it's there to protect us, and it's an alarm system, and young kids have absorbed all of this information and it's probably made them quite anxious. But I do think with early intervention programs we still need a crisis model. We still need a model that the children in early intervention won't solve everything, it will make a huge difference. We need to still create crisis models like CAMS that work and effectively. So you look at the CAMS report, there was psychiatrists in Dubai diagnosing children in Kerry on Zoom. If we think that's acceptable in a country that's seen as the wealthiest in Europe, my background is economics. It's a very blunt instrument on how to judge a society.
I'm trying to imagine too, if there was a point that you realised, this is kind of a big part of what I do now. I don't know whether it was the book, whether it was starting with Lust for Life, or whether in 2019 with the podcast, Where's My Mind? Was there a point where you realised this is actually, a big part of my life? It's not just something that I sort of expressed in a book and then people picked up on. I actually do feel I want to do something about this. I want to be involved. Maybe it was before the book, I don't know.
Well, you see, the book was my story, but unfortunately I've been exposed to many other stories before that, and they're not my stories to tell. They're other individual stories to tell, and I think I got sick of looking at it. I got so sick of looking at people repressing and internalising all this shit that they've gone through in life and not being able to express it and deal with it. And I didn't want to live in that country anymore, and that was the big thing for me. I feel the repression of emotion is one of the most destructive things you can do to a human being, good or bad. And then we have a wellness industry that tells us just to be happy all the time, which is just not reality. The human condition is a spectrum of ups and downs. Yeah. So what made me realise I want to do this more than anything is because mental health issues are complex, but I don't think the solutions are. I think politicians use words like complex to hide your bureaucratic inability to do anything.
Yeah.
And they say it's complex. I mean, it's complex because we have a dysfunctional system that's top heavy, that you won't address because you're the guys who actually designed it. It's okay to admit it didn't work, and it's okay to actually sit down together as adults and figure out how do we want to spend taxpayers' money to better take care of vulnerable people in the country. That's the difference.
I think that's their line of it. That would be an ecumenical matter. It's a way of just brushing it aside a little bit of.
I don't have this. I don't think conflict will solve this issue. I don't think throwing stones to the problem will solve the issue. I think we have to be. I think there has to be huge courage and leadership, and there has to be a little bit of an admission that hasn't worked, and also a bit of dropping of the ego. I think is. But I think in politics, they don't really work around long-term strategies. It's very myopic.
The one thing we should mention now on Saturday, 27th of May, you're talking to the beautiful Reggie Carrigan, and there's a guy who, has a hugely successful career. He's a big, strong, healthy man. I think people make assumptions that, people who are successful like yourself and like Reggie, just that, they must be feeling great 24/7 because things have worked out for them. But that's obviously not the case.
Reggie's a human being.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we all carry something, and Reggie was my captain at Leinster. But also, he's one of the most emotionally intelligent people I've ever met. He really is. He always was, though. Even at Leinster, there was a warmth to him. There was a hardness to him, but there was a warmth to him. There was a lovely little mix with him and with Jane Byrne and a few of the others. Because I was only 19 coming into the Leinster squad. I was like, what? I was terrified, and you could sense it off him. Actually, when I think back to what I went through when I played professional rugby, I think if I brought it to Reggie's table, he would have held me in that and supported me through it. I know he would have, because that's who he is. So it's funny that I moved to Greystones and I didn't know Reggie lived here, and then I was out for a walk one day. I said, Reggie. He's like, you don't miss Reggie.
Yeah.
And now he's my struggling golf partner and good friend. And he's not just, I really enjoy his company. Would you ever be with someone who's just like very easy to be around? So and his wife and beautiful kids. So I do a lot of time for Reggie. I'm really looking forward to interviewing him.
We should say now with the podcast, you've interviewed everybody from Deepak to Adam Clayton to this idea of having these conversations. Is it the goal really to let everybody know that this is, you're not, the only one who suffers. Everybody has issues. Or I don't know if there is a kind of a hope that there'll be some kind of, conclusion, because, it is an ongoing thing. As you say, it's a catchphrase of being complex, but having all these various different people, I don't know if you've sort of evolved over the time with talking to these people, whether you hope the listener kind of finds some new avenues to think about, or...
I do, and I think that it's important to highlight here the live podcast. And I've asked my mates, they're like, are you coming to the live podcast? They're like, oh, I don't know now, might be a bit. I was like, it's not at all. It's irreverent, it's funny, like the mind is hilarious. Like I'm perfectly comfortable pulling the piss out of my mind. I'm kind of going, it really is, when you look back at the certain things that I would have went through, I can in a really light and a warm way laugh at them, because some of the things I used to, even some of the excuses I used to make for why I couldn't show up to things. Like I remember, I couldn't go to training. I think I had about 3,000 wisdom teeth. I used to always say my wisdom teeth. And the coach was like, "Did you not get them out last week?" I think they grew back. And you can laugh at this stuff, and it doesn't always have to be this. That's the beauty of the human condition. It's not. It isn't. It's all of this shit. It's the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think that is what the Where's My Mind podcast. But the other thing the podcast is very much focused on, I think we have to be very careful with here, Paul, is we always put the emphasis on the individual, that they're not resilient enough. You just need to drink more water.
Right.
You just need to try yoga. And I'm like, well, we got to kind of look at the chaos we're surrounded by and the difficulty sometimes. I heard on the radio yesterday, the DJ saying, kids have never been safer. And yes, in conventional ways, we live in a safer world for children. But the problem is their threats now are emotional. And they're always exposed to that emotional threat, and it's really overwhelming. And we got to start thinking differently about mental health and society and culture. And I think what they're doing here at a community level, that changes everything. But still, we have to be very open to the fact that we've got to be very clever in how we design these things. But more importantly, you want to design interventions for children, you got to listen to them.
Right.
Don't think you know the problem.
And I'm starting a campaign to have social media shut down as well. It's just a billion dogs barking all at the same time, which it's not good for the mental health.
Currency is division. That's reality.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd say, I've talked about technology a few times. Part of my study, generally technology has made the world a better place. Social media, without doubt, has made the world a shitter place. There's no middle. I just don't believe when you do a cost-benefit analysis. There's my economics going back. The cost of social media far outweighs the benefit, not for the people who own it, of course.
Right.
But my metaphor is, it feels like we're just gladiators beating the shit out of each other in a coliseum while the owners are up there for their entertainment watching us do it to each other, and we're dividing each other. At a time we need to figure out how the fact that we come together to solve climate change, to solve all the other issues we face in society.
It's supposed to be communication, but it's actually a competition. So it's social media.
But that's the algorithm. It's designed around division. And once you're aware of that, by God, what must it be like for a young child navigating that? I wouldn't have been able to. Like, I remember we used to have a book that was passed around schools, and it would write little notes in the books, and I was terrified of this thing, because like, what if they write something about me on it? And it might, like, Bressie has horrible hair. Like, it could just be that, and it'd be like fucking devastating. And it's just like that, and like a nuclear bomb of that. You know what I mean? So that's back to the emotional threat all the time. Kids feel they could say or do anything at any given moment, and say anything about me. It's terrifying to live with that all the time.
To wrap up, I guess we should say, obviously you've got a lot of coals in the fire. Lizard released their album last year. I don't know whether there's a kind of a need to almost, do all these different things just to sort of have that fun part of it, that you can kind of switch off and be over here and be a rocker, and then you can come back and think about.
That's a really good question. I think there is an intensity to what I do that I love. I do love, but you can't do it all the time. And the problem is that when you go to meet your mates, they're like, can I tell you something? I'm like, oh, okay, I'm here for you, but sometimes I just need to talk about football, or I need to talk about music. And I love that, and I have my friends that are aware of that, and they give me the space to realise that I care greatly for what I do, but I do need space from it sometimes.
So Reggie's going to be a bit of a mess, I'd say, on the 27th.
I'd say he will, and he knows a lot about me as well, so that's the other thing. I always say that when you're interviewing someone who knows a lot about you, it's a different
Tables turn
dynamic.
very quickly.
Yeah, 100%.